You're alive.
This is Senate Transportation. It is Wednesday, the 22nd, and we have Damian Leonard from Ledge Council here, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Damian.
Good morning. For the record, I'm Damian Leonard from the Office of Legislative Counsel. Mr. Chair, do you want to start with talking about appropriations or talking about the miscellaneous motor vehicle bill this morning? I forget the order we had.
We have you on to talk about the District 8 garage first.
Great. So the chair asked me to come in to just give a little bit of background on the appropriations process and the underlying law here, and then I'm going to turn it over to the agency to talk about the progress and changes in this project since it was discussed last year. So beginning with appropriations law. So basically under the Constitution, General Assembly has the authority to appropriate money, meaning that we determine how and how much money can be spent, or the state's money can be spent. We do that in the appropriations bill. So, for example, you say X number of dollars for X purpose, and the money can only be spent for that purpose, and no more than that amount. The governor can always spend less. That's an important thing to keep in mind. So the governor is encouraged to find savings. And the governor and the executive branch carry out those laws. They execute the laws and carry them forward. In some instances, we've provided specific provisions in law that permit someone like the Secretary of Transportation, the Commissioner of Motor Vehicles, to make adjustments and reallocate funds, understanding that we are a part-time legislature and things happen. So looking at that law, the main one for transportation is under 19 VSA 10G subsection H. If capital projects in the transportation program are delayed because of unanticipated problems with permitting, right-of-way acquisition, construction, local concerns, or availability of federal or state funds, the Secretary is authorized to advance other projects in the adopted transportation program for the current fiscal year. That subsection also authorizes the Secretary to undertake projects to address an emergency or safety issue. So, for example, things related to a storm, unexpected failure of a major piece of infrastructure, something like that. And then the last piece is that if a project in the transportation program requires additional funding to maintain the schedule in the adopted transportation program for the current fiscal year, the agency is authorized to allocate necessary resources from its appropriations. So we have provided some flexibility. The only caveat in all of this flexibility is that it doesn't go beyond what's stated, and that the Secretary does not have the authority to cancel a project just because it's been delayed or something like that. They have to come back to the General Assembly with the proposed change to the transportation program. So turning back to the District 8 garage, last year, your T-bill. Oh,
The question, the way that MPOs work, I know you know this, right, is that the state and the MPO together authorize projects. So I know we only have one MPO. So when you say that this year's transportation plan, is that the first year of that? I forgot the name. It's like a TIP.
no.
There's the 5-year plan,
Yeah, so the transportation program is a 5-year program.
right?
Each year when it comes in here, the program is updated and it shows planned funding and allocations out for 5 years. So if you go to the AOT website, under what we do, there's a budget tab and you can click on the transportation program and you can pull up everything from maintenance to transportation buildings, bridges, etc. There are tabs for all of that. It will tell you the projects that are in there, what the planned allocation is for each year, and little notes. There's obviously a lot more detail to some of these projects,
Right.
but that gives you the general overview. So from that, we can see that there's 2 million allocated for construction of a 10-bay garage at the District 8 garage, with an additional 825,000 allocated for statewide maintenance of transportation buildings, specifically replacement of heating systems. And then the money for that, so that is the transportation program, and T-bill authorized the spending. The actual appropriation occurs in the big bill down the hall. And so that was in section B902 of the big bill in Act 113. And then the 2025 transportation program projected an additional 2.5 million for the District 8 garage in FY26. So,
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
more wondering about just the process. And so, but the first year of the 5 years is not our year one. It sounded like you said that.
Well, there's the appropriation and then there's the 5-year plan.
Right.
So we're appropriating the first year of the plan, but you can see
Okay.
kind of what.
That was my question.
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah, so we don't appropriate 5 years out, but we do approve the plan.
Okay.
And then the plan changes from year to year.
Right.
Different priorities may come up, efficiencies may be found. This things that seems like an important project may be scrapped, things like that.
Right.
So, and then if you look at the actual transportation program, it'll break things out by operating expenses, personal services, where the money's coming from, et cetera, under each of those tabs. And then so for transportation buildings, if we look at that on page 2 of that, under that tab, it's got estimated budget for FY25, then projected for 26, 27, and 28. And then,
Are you looking at the plan on the AOT site or what?
yeah, this is on AOT site.
Which
So
is
this
the
is
same
the
as the-
approved.
Binder that we get usually.
This is the approved version of the planner. So with the adjustments that are made in the T-bill, whatever those might be, where we've reallocated funds or adjusted funding. And then it'll go down through on the succeeding pages through all the different projects and what's allocated, including projects that were in the years leading up to the current year. So you can see things like a project in Mendon and North Hero, New Haven, et cetera, where there were additional building projects that occurred in FY24 and FY23, et cetera.
Right. So is the Chittenden MPO does have a separate area of that?
So I'm not
Okay,
sure.
I
the
can
answer
talk
to
to you
this.
after.
Yeah. So I'm just not sure.
Okay,
So
okay.
I'm still learning my way through this.
Okay.
So bear with me, and
Yeah,
Logan
no
may be
worries.
able to help.
And I'm
more.
new
So,
on this committee.
Yeah, the MPO plan is different.
Okay.
It's different.
Right, but they should overlap at some point, is my understanding of how it works. But we can,
Yeah, we really haven't spent much time talking about the MPO.
Okay.
So I'm not sure either, like what,
Yeah.
how the two are overlapping.
okay,
We can do that at a later time.
yes, thank you.
So, and then, so there was in FY26, as I mentioned, there's 2.5 million allocated, which was for construction of the office building at the District 8 garage. And then there are other appropriations that went to AOT for other things like highway maintenance, et cetera. So highway maintenance is, if not the biggest, one of the biggest at 106 million. So, and that's in section B905 of the big bill. So separate appropriations, separate purposes. Do you want me to talk at all about my understanding of District 8 garage?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, I want you to
So-
cover from your understanding, so we have it on the table, what our legal staff believes about this. And and the advice that you're giving us, and then we'll listen to the agency.
Okay. So, so I first heard about the District Gate Garage in late October of last year. It was brought to my attention by the outgoing chair of the House Committee, who had just been in touch with the agency. And so funding for phase one had been authorized this past year, as I mentioned. And then the main contractor for the project had approached AOT. My understanding is sometime like early October. I don't have a specific date. And with a proposal to commence work on phase two of the project, which is the construction of the office building. Importantly, beginning work on phase two immediately rather than having the contractor lay off their staff and then restart would allow them to project significant savings from reduced administrative costs and overhead, not having to pay unemployment, and then reduced materials costs, assuming materials continue to appreciate and get more expensive on the market. And so the projected cost savings was reducing the cost from 2.5 to 2.8 million in FY26. And remember, the projected cost in the T-bill or in the transportation program was 2.5, down to 1.8 million. So an additional cost savings of projected to be at least $700,000.
So it dropped from 2.5
down to
1.8.
That's right. Yeah. So at a minimum, $700,000 if that number wasn't revised up in the current year's T-bill. It could also result in additional cost savings to the state through savings of leased space that's being used for those offices currently. Based on the lower quote, my understanding is that AOT determined that it had sufficient resources in the amounts appropriated for highway maintenance to transfer over to the amounts appropriated for transportation buildings. Again, this is my understanding. And I would look to AOT to confirm this or to correct me. To move forward with the project. Now, if you remember what I talked about with the statutory transfer authority, this isn't an instance where one project was delayed and another was moving forward that I'm aware of. This is not. This is not an instance where there was an emergency. And this is not an instance where I'm always forgetting the third category there. This is not an instance where it required additional funding, importantly, to maintain the schedule in the current year's transportation program, because this was scheduled out to FY26.
So just
as I understand it.
if it was one project being swapped out for another, it's the same appropriation.
Right. And the language in 19H, says that if capital projects in the transportation program are delayed because of unanticipated problems, the secretary is authorized to advance other projects in the adopted transportation program. It's really important to note it doesn't say they have to come from the same line item.
Right.
So,
Well,
Yeah.
it's a bidding process, and some
Right.
bids are high, and then some bids come in way over the estimate. So,
right.
but
And that would
those
fall
things
under,
would be all under the same appropriations.
right. And that would fall under the unanticipated problems delaying the project. So this, in contrast, was an opportunity to take advantage of savings, which our statute, to the best of my knowledge, does not recognize as a reason to transfer funds. And I do want to be clear that this is, it's not, we're a part-time legislature. Things happen in the executive branch. So historically, my understanding is the process, and I have not worked in transportation, but historically, the process is that if you have something that's not blessed in statute, to come to the legislature and say, we're going to need a budget adjustment on this to basically bless this going back. And oftentimes there's sort of a tacit agreement that yes, when the BAA comes up, we'll put language in the BAA that okays the transfer. Thank you for letting us know. We do have oversight committees that have some authority to transfer funds, the emergency board, the joint fiscal committee, but those are also very limited authorities. And then other areas, same thing with like BGS has limited authority to transfer funds. A lot of these areas where we're putting money into capital projects where things that are unknown that can happen, there is limited authority, and periodically we come into a situation where we may need to consider adjusting it because something happens that wasn't anticipated. So my understanding is that based on the lower quote and the opportunity to generate savings, AOT moved forward with phase 2. And then the question that I received in October was, do we need to provide legislative okay for that? My legal opinion is yes. I don't see anything in the statute that authorizes that based on the facts that I have. But that can be as easy as transferring some money from B905 to B902 in the Budget Adjustment Act. And it may also be something where you want to consider whether this is something going forward, that if something is in the transportation program and you can advance the project and realize savings, that you okay limited amounts of transfers. The important thing when you're delegating this ability to adjust appropriations is that you don't give away all legislative authority. Courts have struck that down in the past when we've done that. They have okayed things like the emergency board and joint fiscal committee's ability to make limited changes in an emergency. What they have not okayed is the ability to sort of write a blank check. And so we always have to have some limitations there. I think the way 19 VSA 10G is worded, where it outlines specific scenarios, does set enough of a boundary that it would likely pass legal muster if it ever got challenged. I also think that legal challenges are fairly unlikely in this area, because these are not projects that are attracting a huge amount of attention and controversy in general. But if it were challenged, I think these would likely provide enough guidelines. So that's what I've got. Do you have any questions?
So basically, the crux of the problem is they move money from maintenance to do a construction project.
That's my understanding. So, and I should say my facts are all secondhand. So, my understanding is the crux of the issue that we have is that money was moved from one appropriation to another without statutory authorization, or authorization in the big bill or the transportation program. Or T-bill, excuse me. And we can fix that through the BAA, if you want to bless that now.
I'm not inclined to go anywhere with any fix or anything.
Right.
We're just at this stage trying to understand what went on and where it is. And if you're through, I will say this morning in this morning's schedule that was handed out, that as Megan and I put together the schedule last week, we kind of didn't include in there that the emergency board was going to meet this morning. And with at least 2 members of the committee out, we may take a break. Damien, do you have time between 11 and 12?
I do.
Here?
Yeah.
So we may take a break to go up and watch you do your thing. Will it be your first emergency board meeting? Yeah, so we want to, you're going to be our star. We watch, but we may break to go up and do that and then come back in with you after. Right? But at this point, and this to understand, Do you have a question?
I do.
Amy, before we go,
Yeah.
we'll ask that and then we'll put you in the chair and,
Thank you,
Go
Mr.
ahead.
Chair. Just a question about the process. So it was phase two, already awarded to this bidder, to this company? Or would there have been what would have happened if they didn't expedite phase two? Would there have been a bidding process for phase two?
I think, I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay.
So I think that's a better question for AOT.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
if you could swap chairs and
Yep.
thank you for coming.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. Good morning. For the record, Jana Morse, Agency of Transportation. I'm the Director of Administration and Finance. And I'm here to answer any questions you have about the District 8 facility. If I may, I could start by giving you a little overview of where we're at and how we got to where we're at, if that's all right with you, Mr. Chair.
Absolutely.
Okay, great.
Right. As Damien said, the information he's got is secondhand, so
Sure.
we want to hear it right from you.
So I didn't bring a presentation this morning. I was hoping for just a
We
little
don't
bit
want
more of a dialogue.
presentation. We just want to understand.
Right. So we came up with a concept for the District 8 facility after realizing that our St. Albans maintenance facility was in a state of disrepair. We would have to make some major investments in it in order to bring it up to current codes and standards, to be able to fit our vehicles and really meet our current business needs. And at the time, we had the opportunity to look at other areas that we might be able to relocate that would better serve the organization and the areas that we need to access quickly. So we have a video, which I'd be happy to circulate via email, that shows, for those of you that might not have seen it last year, that shows a little bit about how our operations have shifted and the timeliness that allows us to access the interstate from the new facility, as opposed to driving through the city, around a bunch of corners, by our schools, and, you know, creating a little bit less safety hazards, with moving our staff and our vehicles closer to the areas that we need to be able to access. So once we purchased the property in Swanton, we were able to put the project out to bid. And we did it as a full project with an ad alternate for the office. So we did it as two pieces, and it allowed the agency to decide whether or not we could advance the full facility with the maintenance garage, allowing also for capacity for our simple garage staff to be able to operate out of that facility, as well as a salt shed and then the office complex. This would be our first facility that's a fully green facility. So we've implemented solar panels. We have a solar array. There's EV charging stations. We have a lot of other heating systems, our renewable energy. If you'd like more about the specifics on that, we'll have Brad McAvoy come in and speak with you about the specifics of the facility. And when we decided to advance it at the time, in 23, we had come in with a full proposal and said, this is what we're looking to do. And that proposal included, in testimony, a couple of options, including carry forward from prior years, and understanding that we had not advanced our Lunenburg facility, and there were monies in the district maintenance operations budget for those funds to be carried forward. So we moved money through the district maintenance operations and transportation buildings carry forward, and combined those with the new one-time appropriation in order to fund the office building. So we didn't move money between appropriations. We used carry forward through many prior years, 22, 23, and 24, to be able to fund the gap in the contract cost and the 3.5 one-time appropriation, 3.5 million, excuse me, one-time appropriation in general fund, which was in last year's appropriation.
2.5.
3.5. Yes, sir. So as we moved through the project, as was previously mentioned, the office building was quoted at between 2.5 and 2.8 million. And when we had the opportunity in October, the company that's doing the work for us approached us and said, we can save you on mobilization costs. We can save, you on materials. We would be able to we would have to be able to stay here. We would be able to keep over 25 Vermonters employed through the winter instead of placing them on unemployment. And we can deliver this if you allow us to sharpen our pencils. So we said, okay, let's see what we can do. And they came back with a 1.987, 1.897. So almost 1.9 million is what we signed our change order for in order to build the office building. And that was authorized, I believe it was late October, for them to move forward. So at this point, we have a partially constructed office building. They're working on the interior. We'll have solar going up, and our staff will be able to move in sometime in late spring of 2025. So one of the things I'd like to share is, we had the opportunity for cost savings. Because the vehicles are moving there, our staff needs to move there also to be able to operate and to be able to function with the equipment that they're using. So we would have been putting about $200,000 per year for the first year, and not per year, excuse me, $200,000 for the first year, and an additional approximately $80,000 per year to lease pods for our employees to work in that would be placed on site at the existing Swanton facility, District 8 facility. And they would be placed off to the side. Employees would be working in those instead of their office building, and then wait for the office to be constructed, probably at a higher cost, although I can't make that a true statement. Our assumption would be that costs would only increase as time goes on. So we made the decision to advance that using the authority under 19 VSA Section 10 that allows us to make adjustments to the transportation program and the secretary to, in the best interest of the state, for construction, including transportation related facilities. So where we did that, we felt like it was in the best interest of the state to save the money, to not incur additional expenses, and to be able to realize our cost savings in the year, and also provide jobs for the Vermonters that would have been placed on unemployment for about 6 months. And that's what I have to share initially. I'm happy to answer any questions, and maybe if there's something I missed, I'll think of it and share it again.
Do you,
Go ahead.
No, I
Oh,
I think that really covers that. Historically in the agency, how have you handled these? And I've been on joint fiscal for a long time, and I think about since 1999, about 20 years I've been on joint fiscal. It's not uncommon for departments and agencies to come and report what they're doing. What has been in these particular type cases, what's the agency's practice been?
So to answer your question, Mr. Chair, our agency practice around transportation buildings projects in particular have been to fund them through the district maintenance operations or through the transportation buildings appropriation. Historically, we funded them through district maintenance operations, and there's a line item under the overall district maintenance operations budget for major maintenance. And within that, there's about $1.5 to $2 million in a given year that allows the district maintenance staff to repair their maintenance facilities, to reconstruct roofs, to do any of the major maintenance on their facilities that might not have been appropriated in the transportation buildings appropriation. So 2 separate appropriations. Within transportation buildings, we've appropriated funds in the past for some of our larger facilities. The flexibility within the district maintenance operations allows district maintenance to be able to either, in a bad winter, to maintain our snow and ice control plans and maintain the roads for our traveling public, or to be able to make decisions on whether or not we can afford to invest in a facility replacement at that time. So we don't make we would not pull money from any of the safety projects that might be implemented for any given facility. We would make sure that those could be covered, but we might delay something that is not a safety or an urgent facility need in order to maintain the snow and ice control for a given year.
Andy?
So the 3 examples that that we heard from Damien about what your authority to transfer funds, none of those pertain because you're not using one of those. You're saying that since it's all within the maintenance budget, facility maintenance buildings is within the maintenance budget. So that within the maintenance budget, whether it's facilities, snow plowing, whatever, repairing a salt shed, that covers using funds in the maintenance for a new building. Is that what the agency said?
It could cover them, yes.
So that's why you're saying there wasn't a transfer because
That's
buildings is within maintenance. And even though we appropriated it for the building, it was within maintenance, basically.
The monies were, we did not transfer monies between appropriations. The monies were spent out of the appropriations from whence they were originally appropriated, either district maintenance or transportation buildings. So the project.
Because you're
had
saying
multiple
if you
funding
took it out of
sources.
maintenance, you're saying this is a maintenance expense because it's a maintenance building, basically. I'm just trying to understand kind of what the agency said.
We had always planned to fund it from both appropriations, transportation buildings and district maintenance operations budget. So I think the answer to your question is yes.
Okay.
We did use district maintenance monies as planned to fund the project, and the project was approved using multiple funding sources.
But even when you use multiple funding sources, we still need to appropriate, or you don't think you could do anything maintenance related. So why have a separate appropriation for the building if it's all just maintenance? Why not just appropriate the whole maintenance budget? And then you guys is like, well, we're doing this within maintenance, but we specifically said you spend this money on the building.
Yes, so we knew that we wouldn't be able to fund the entire building out of 1 year's appropriation without getting the one-time general fund appropriation. So we requested that, knowing we could cover the rest of the facility through either transportation buildings, the requested appropriation, or through district maintenance, and the carry forward and the reappropriation of the funds there.
Okay.
I hope I'm answering your question.
Right. Well, why it seems I guess we maybe need to go back to Damon and look how that works. And I guess that's why there was no request for a BAA change, because you guys don't feel like there isn't a change in your mind. It just was always in maintenance. And that was your plan. You would have come back this year and said, we're gonna, take advantage of this thing in our contract that they can build the second part of it. We're gonna just take this maintenance money to use that, and we're gonna build it. Like that could have happened this year, and it wouldn't have been. You just said that's what we're gonna do. We might have blessed it because we're all here doing the new transportation fund, but because when we were told about it in the summer, that's not what they kind of said at the time. They said, we want you to know we're making this change. They didn't say, we don't need your authority. Although I asked Michelle when she sent the email, I was like, under what authority are you doing this? And she said, well, let me talk to the governor's lawyers and I'll get back to you, which made it seem like they weren't sure what authority they had. But maybe that's Michelle and not you, because you're working on the finances and she's a policy person. So maybe that's just why it seemed like it was a bigger deal than maybe what seems like you're saying. And I don't know what Damien's response is to that they don't need the authority.
Why don't we wait and,
Yeah.
and we'll get, so there was a line item in the projects for this garage, correct?
Yes,
And you didn't use that money, but you believe that the project was both in that line item and in maintenance.
Or it could be.
we did use that money that was appropriated in transportation buildings. And we're spending that down, as well as the one-time 3.5 million general fund appropriation, and then the carry forward monies and unused major maintenance monies that were appropriated in 22, 23, and 24.
Okay.
What's the total package?
The total package is $12,615,954.
For my said.
$615,954.
Go ahead.
I am taking notes, but I don't know if I'm writing it correctly. Could you just write this up for us and just so that we can understand it?
I can provide a summary of my testimony in.
Yeah, if you don't
Yeah,
mind.
you
I mean,
can put
just,
it on a one page,
yeah,
so you can see the dollars.
that'd be great.
And I guess one of my questions is, if it was just kind of a normal thing, why send us an email saying you're doing?
I didn't send the email, so I don't
No.
know.
I think at this point, we at least have a general idea and we're gonna get a summary, and if people wanna, talk about this further, we can do that at a future date.
And is it done, the garage?
Not yet.
Okay.
Will be done in late spring.
Great.
We're anticipating occupancy around May of 2025.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
We've got 20 minutes and you want to start the other bill?
Sure. I'd love to.
And we'll break at, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
All right.
And at 10, we'll break. We're down 2 members, so there'll be 3 of us left. We'll go up and we'll watch, and then at the appropriate time, maybe shoot. What? How long is your schedule for emergency board?
Emergency board schedule. They have it for an hour, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I haven't heard it takes an hour. I think it depends on.
Yeah, I'm thinking that if we could show up back here, I think in 45 minutes, they'll be pretty close to done, and then we'll go back with you, Jamie. And
Sounds good. So back at 10:45.
yeah, back
Great.
at 10:45 and we'll go till 10.
Perfect. All right. I'm still Damian Leonard from the Office of Legislative Counsel.
Are you sure?
You only had about 20 minutes.
I have a copy though, so things can change. So in front of you, you've got the very first draft of the miscellaneous motor vehicles bill for the year. This is the department's proposed language. So I'll walk you through it. You see the commissioners joined us. And so they'll be able to speak to the bill once I'm done walking through it. So I've broken things out with little reader assistance headings in here. So on page 1, this is a clarifying change to the definition of pleasure car. So it includes all motor vehicles not otherwise defined in this title, and shall include plug-in electric vehicles, battery electric vehicles, and plug-in hybrid electric vehicles as they are defined, because those are otherwise defined motor vehicles. We didn't want to inadvertently, the goal here is to avoid inadvertently excluding those vehicles from all of the other statutes that mention pleasure cars. Use that term. The next section, section 2, which starts on the bottom of that page and goes on to page 2, is relates to veterans designations on an enhanced driver's license. And it's really just a clarifying change. If you look at line 7 on page 2, we're clarifying that a new application for an enhanced license shall be accompanied by, and then the following documentation. That means that individuals don't need to submit that documentation every time they renew their license. And then what we've done here too is I broke what used to be a very long paragraph into 4 subparagraphs, just to try to make it a little easier to read. So the subparagraphs are broken out by sort of subject matter. So that's just a clarifying change, not a substantive one. Section 3 relates to documenting anatomical gifts on non-driver's license identification cards. So some of the changes, like on line 19, you'll see we've just made a change for gender neutrality. And then turning to line 9 of page 4, we've added a new subsection N that provides that the commissioner shall provide a form that will serve as a document of anatomical gift. And then an indicator would be it should say shall be placed on the non-driver identification card. So I'll make that change. For any individual who has executed that form. So this just allows folks who have a non-driver identification card to make an
Do
anatomical.
what we do with the regular license.
What that?
Do what we do with the regular. license.
Exactly. Yeah. The next is disability placards for volunteer drivers. My understanding here, again, the change is on page all the way down on page 7. So the other changes in here are just changing him or her to the individual or something similar. The placards, they don't make a specific volunteer driver placard. So volunteer organizations get the placards and it's the same as a regular disabled placard that you would hang from your mirror. So just deleting that because it's inconsistent with practice. So we're just deleting the sentence on line 2. Everything else is a non-substantive change. Section 5, replacement registration certificates. And I bet you guys are saying to yourself right now, I'm glad we have a break in the middle of this because I don't know how I'd go through an hour of this. So this relates to generating a replacement registration certificate. You can generate that from your electronic account, which is currently my DMV. So you can go there and you'll be able to generate that.
And for no charge.
For no charge,
That's
yes.
great.
Yes, you can print it out on your own. Fees, starting in section 6. So you'll remember the EV infrastructure fee from, I think we enacted that last year. And this provides that it shall not be charged for vehicles owned by the state. And that it shall not be charged for vehicles owned by a municipality that are used by that municipality or another municipality for municipal purposes. And then finally, the EV infrastructure fee shall not be charged for vehicles, including trailers, trucks, and ambulances and other motor vehicles that are owned by a volunteer fire department, other volunteer firefighting organization, or an organization conducting rescue operations. So this could be your volunteer ambulance corps, and is used solely for firefighting or rescue purposes or both. So this prevents a carve out there where you buy something through the department, but then use it for personal uses or something else.
So how does this relate to what we do with other vehicles?
So this is part of a larger section where we give exemptions for state and municipal and then firefighting vehicles from the charges. A regular person's EV will be paying I believe it's an additional $89 per year, and a plug-in hybrid would pay half of that.
Yeah.
So this is exempting those municipalities and those firefighting organizations from
But
that.
it treats them the same as we do
With respect to other fees, yeah.
with other. So it's meant to track what we do with everything else.
That's my understanding, yes.
They don't pay registration fees now.
So you'll see this as subsection H. Subsections A through G relate to other exemptions and special provisions for them. There are requirements relating to how those vehicles are designated and so forth in order to qualify for these exemptions, which we'll get to in just a moment.
And since electric vehicles and hybrids, the part of the issue was here, we won't pay the gas tax.
Yes.
And this was a replacement for some of that.
Mhm.
And do we dedicate the revenues from this, or did we just deposit it?
We dedicated them to charging for certain multifamily buildings. the first year.
So we dedicated the funds. Do we, do other vehicles get exempted from, the fuel taxes?
I'm not sure. I can find out for you.
You know, that will be a question that we'll want to hear from, somebody. And, but
The person behind you might.
Yeah. Logan, do you wanna be the friend that I found?
Sure. For the record, Logan Weber, the Joint Fiscal Office. For gasoline, I believe we do not, but there are a number of diesel exemptions. So like municipalities, stuff like that, not pay diesel tax. But I can give you a whole list of exemptions. if you're
yeah,
interested.
I think we'll want to compare.
Yep.
We'll want to be able to compare.
The next exemption is the veterans exemption. So this is an instance where we already have a statute, 23 VSA 378, which we're amending here, which provides that no fees shall be charged to an honorably discharged veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces for the registration of a motor vehicle that the veteran has acquired with financial assistance from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, or a vehicle that the veteran has acquired to replace that vehicle. And so this is adding in the annual $2 emissions fee that's charged under 3 VSA 2822 to the list of those fees that are not charged. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. How do they document that the vehicle was?
So there is a VA form 21-4502 that U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs issues that certifies that the individual was entitled to that financial assistance.
Okay.
You remember the document.
Actually, we get some-
Right here.
Yeah, I'm not.
Oh, yeah, I see it right here.
I'm not that good.
I thought,
But
I
yes, you
thought I
are.
was gonna compliment you on your memory, since it's right there, I think.
No, I've learned over the years doing Veterans Affairs for the last 10 years that there's almost always a document number a sentence later. So
Okay.
yeah, that's just a little trick, insider tip
Cool.
there.
Thank you.
Um,
I'll look for that next
yeah.
time.
That's something that we often have to do because the federal government loves their obscurely numbered forms. And it's confusing at best. And so we often put it in the statute so that everyone is on the same page about what we're looking for. The next piece here is clarifying the fees for individuals who are receiving SSI or SSDI, so social supplemental security income or social security disability. And individuals with a disability as defined in our public accommodations law. It's a discounted price for a driver's license or driver's privilege card of $10 with $10 for the renewal every 4 years and $5 for replacement. And this tracks with, I can't remember the section off the top of my head, but we do this in another section as well. So this is just making it consistent. The next section we're going to get into is we're going to start talking about learner's permits here, 23 VSA 617. So go ahead.
And this is more than it's perfect. How'd they come up with the $10 and?
I don't know. I think that dates back a while. But
I'd just be interested to see.
Yeah.
How we can, so, I'm sure there's other people in the room taking notes.
yeah, so the first change you'll see is on page 12, lines 15 to 17, the first substantive change. again, we've made changes for gender neutrality. A replacement learner's permit for the operation of a motorcycle may be generated from the applicant's electronic account for no charge. So again, you can get a replacement of that paper document from your account. And then the next change, E1, reflects that the learner's permit will contain the photograph now from your driver's license record. So a learner's permit for the operation of a motorcycle, it used to say which is not for the operation of a motorcycle. So now motorcycle learner's permits shall contain a photograph or an image likeness of the individual. And a learner's permit for a motor vehicle shall contain a photograph or image likeness of the individual if the permit is obtained in person. And so that updates the law there to reflect that we can now do photos for the motorcycle learner permits. And then we're deleting the last sentence. The photographic permit shall be available at locations designated by the commissioner, because my understanding is that all of the DMV locations can do the photographic permits. And that is it for that. And that brings us to commercial learners permits. So we're going to skip way ahead to the end of Title 23. And the first change is on line 17 of page 13. We're adding and photograph to the information that has to be on the commercial learner's permit. So birthday, sex, height, and photograph all have to be on there. And then the next piece is later on in the commercial learner's permit here. This is a technical correction. In 4122, we provide that no court, state's attorney, or law enforcement officer may defer imposition of a sentence or judgment if the defendant holds a commercial driver's license or was operating a commercial motor vehicle, and we're adding holds a commercial driver's license, commercial learner's permit, or was operating a commercial motor vehicle when the violation occurred. So that's just an important lining up, because otherwise there was this hole in the statute where if you committed traffic, or if you violated a traffic law other than a parking violation, and you only held a learner's permit, that wouldn't go, that could be, they could defer imposition of the sentence or judgment. When if you held the driver's license or you had been in a commercial motor vehicle at the time, they wouldn't have been allowed to. So it created a strange loophole there, and this closes that. Does that make sense? All right. Are we at time?
I think that it's about 4 minutes out.
Great.
And I think at this point we'll break till 10:45, and then we'll come back and do that. And